Welcome to the Untold Tales audio anthologies. Written by Aeronwy Withers and Marcus Yeatman-Crouch, and narrated by Melissa Del Toro Schaffner. Infant Repo. Dad wakes up at 8:30. The morning is pale and clear, stretching across the sky in ice and sun. He wants to sit up, but cannot summon any strength to his stomach. He gazes outside instead. Outside gazes back. A cloud slips out of the window frame by its tail end. 4 mornings have passed without Dad. He's been asleep for a while, longer than he's ever slept before. Dad does nothing much to begin with. Minutes or hours pass as he tries to recall why he's in this bed. His first instinct is to sob. In fear, perhaps, of the life he has forgotten, the one he must now re-enter. Perhaps it is the lack of anything better to do that sets him off. He cannot conceive laughing, and is unlikelier yet to speak. For what would he say? To whom would he say it? So, Dad cries for a couple seconds, until he realizes it is unproductive, and stops. He closes his eyes. The squawk of the morning's herald petrels fades from fanfare into mundane chatter. His legs and arms are determined to move, but his sluggish mind and his aching core resist. He does eventually shed the covers, and as his clammy skin meets the air, the chill shudders him awake for good. He sits at the edge of the bed. His toes curl upon the linoleum, and then they're metal and shaking on wooden boards, and the feline roar of an engine is alive in his ears. His hands are encased in gunmetal, and the wheels upon the axle below bump and jolt his mass into the air, while the weight of the payload in his rucksack drags him back down. Dad blinks hard to clear the static from his eyes, grateful not to feel the burn of the airborne Lois scattered by the truck. The driver, in the front, says nothing. The arid plantation sprawls before him outside the windshield, capped by a slate blue sky dense with smoke. He winces at the taste of ash and grit in his mouth, making a silent curse at the environmental immersion sensors in the damn robot. He takes a deep breath. The pit in his stomach fills with purpose. Dad reaches instinctually for his earpiece. Animate. He glances at his watch. Rauchstucken. Fogfall. Do you copy? Feedback crackles briefly in his ear. The smoke that blankets the sky at fogfall tends to intercept transmission and causes a couple seconds of delay in the ordinarily flawless performance of the Herauder comms headset. The level plains of the plantation horizon begin to prickle like cats' arched backs into spined hills, furry at their peaks, with the oppressive presence of the smoke. The hills are low set at the margins of the plantation, but once the first hill passes by him in a flash through the truck window, each one begins to arch higher into the sky, steep and ridged from foot to foot. Tufts of grass peek from the regular ridges, which are some 6 feet apart from the next, mechanical in their form. Welcome back. Identification number, over. D4D029083, over. Dad? I'd never thought I'd get to meet you. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Are you familiar with the drop-off spot? Over. I would appreciate brevity. Coordinates, please. Over. Right. Latitude is 9.94821. Longitude is negative 33.37726. Dad clears his throat. Oh. The earpiece crackles sheepishly. Sorry, Dad. Over. He grimaces. The truck hits a particularly hard bump, and Dad grabs the rattling door, partly to stop its incessant trembling, mainly to prevent another spike through his already aching spine. The engineers could try and dampen the pain receptors all they wanted. None of their innovation would slow the closing maw of Age's snarling mouth. It ate away at him in bigger chunks each day. The truck eventually screeches to a halt, and the engine's growl fades to an idle purr. The peaks of the hills are now entirely invisible. Each one soars upwards with alien drama, as if the landscape is a palpitation-patterned electrocardiogram. Dad thinks that, at their tops, they must sharpen to a point, scraping the steel bellies of moon-bound trams before plunging back into the fogfall below. As evening encroaches and the fogfall smoke seeps lower, a leaden swath staunches the bleeding sky. There's a hollow knocking from the driver's cab. Dad sits up and leans over the front seat. Wincing through the window, he sees a lithe, oily black shape in the far distance. It competes with the surrounding hills for height, stretching the thin tendril of its neck with one sweeping lazy movement, until it meets the smoke. Like a sock puppet, its mouth opens as if by the control of a clumsy prisoner within, unattuned to the body it animates. An anfractuous tongue licks the salt from the sky. The creature's neck suddenly balloons and constricts, sending a pulse about the peaks to echolocate its next footstep. The beast follows the silent path through the mountains until... vroom! The cusp of the pulse laps against the truck. Dad inhales sharply and begins counting under his breath. 4, 3, 2, 1. A noise like a whale call, deep and so unfathomably sibylline, it is chilling. It drones out inaudibly. Dad feels its departure, a fading vibration that penetrates through metal, straight to his bones. The bassy sound that shook the truck quiets, and then it's as if nothing has ever felt this still. Dad is numbed. His inaction forces him to watch as the Inc 20's winding neck twists, and watches back. When the beast's head halts, its eyes follow a second after, huge and wise in a sect of knowledge that no man can name. The numbness throughout him washes into a pleasant warmth that travels from sternum to spine. The truck door unlatches. He steps into the open and takes a deep breath, pushing the door shut gently in his stead. He crouches and slings the rucksack from his back, unzipping it and unearthing the payload from its stomach. Dad freezes. He has completed many tasks of this nature, disposals. A variety of payloads are destroyed this way, fed to the black hole beast that devours anything thrown its way. Where disposed things go is beyond any member of the Herauder organization, from private to sergeant major of operations. This isn't a matter of secrecy. It's a matter of ignorance. Nobody knows what happens to disposals after they are consumed by Inc 20. Inc 20, or Inc, is the only aberration of its kind. Its peculiar oozing black form and unknowable nature have made it the eruption's greatest mystery and the Herauder's best-kept secret. Dad stares down at the payload. It, undoubtedly the smallest living thing in the vicinity of the plantation, stares back. He knocks gently on the driver's window. The driver winds it down. "Corporal?" the driver asks. "Look at this." "Sorry, I'm under strict orders not to acknowledge the payload." "Look!" The driver hesitates. His eyes dart from Inc's sprawling mass to the top of Dad's helmet. It is lightly speckled with silver punctures which stud its matte orange finish with pearlescent steel aureoles. The driver looks, and his breath catches. "Corporal, is that—" "It is, isn't it? Tell me I'm not going fucking crazy." "A baby." Dad wakes up at 8:30. With a sharp inhale, he shoots upright and flings the bedsheets aside. He falls out of bed and searches the room on all fours, knocking aside his heart monitor and IV drip, and sending the wheeled visitor seats skating. The commotion eventually summons a pair of nurses to his cubicle. One, a short and bird-faced brunette, stoops to his side and moves a gloved hand over his shoulder. "Corporal?" He looks up at her with his teeth bared like a snarling dog. He throws himself backward. "Don't touch me. Put me back." "Sir, your readings are—" "Put me back now," he growls. "I won't ask again." In the tense seconds following her terse order, another hospital attendant enters the room. Her lanyard swings from side to side like a pendulum of rank as she approaches, the ID card settling nearly atop her stockinged knees as she crouches before Dad. The ID card reads, Melinda Dnepra, medical director. "You aren't out there, Corporal," she says. Her voice is low and textured, fine-grained like emery paper. "You're unarmed in a loose hospital gown. I'd say you were in a less fit state than a talking mutt to be issuing my staff orders." He seethes for a silent moment and reaches back to tie his gown. "I am perfectly well. I was ejected without reason. I wasn't hit. I wasn't—" "You weren't down?" she asks. Melinda rises to stand. She pores over the naps of his spine and follows them to his bare backside before turning around. "You're right. You were forcibly ejected. The order came from above. You induced a direct disobeyal of orders." The medical director's heels clack away on the linoleum. She pauses and looks over her shoulder before leaving the cubicle. "I hear your driver will shortly be terminated. Rest well, Corporal." "Run me through that again," the evaluator says. Her voice is crisp and clear, just like the rest of her. White scrubs and blonde hair. She peers at Dad through cat-eyed glasses, which perch on her nose in such a way that her gaze is always one of quiet derision. Her request is not sincere. She doesn't care to hear about the disposal or need any further clarity on the situation. Something about the evaluator's ever-steady demeanor suggests she perfected the distance between the content of the stories she heard and her emotions a long time ago. She just wants to make sure there is enough evidence to support Dad's case file and eventual termination. Still, this evaluator was proving less afraid of hearing mission details than the other evaluator staff that had recorded his debriefs in the past. Dad glances at the digital voice recorder set between them, a technological relic by all accounts, but handy when the higher-ups wanted to cut corners on the budget. "It goes against every human instinct. Delivering a child into danger? A living child. Disposal should have briefed me on this one." "You know that's not how it goes." Dad appreciates the evaluators, the only staff privy to the nature of his missions outside of Herauder Command. He detects the smallest hint of sympathy in this one's voice, the faintest chime of hope in the padded interview room. "You've disposed of organic material before. Remember, we don't know what Inc. 20 does with any of it." "It doesn't come out the other end, that's for sure." He suppresses the wince of discomfort rising to the surface at a baby being described as organic material. "And I've never been given live packages before. It was alive. I can't stress that point enough." He finishes, bringing his clasped hands down upon the table between them with a bump. The recorder hops in reaction, and the evaluator's breath catches. She collects herself and shrugs. This time, it is with earnest ignorance. Her gaze moves to the file in her hands, searching for the easiest protocol response to distress, courtesy of the higher-ups. She doesn't find much. "To accurately inform our knowledge of Inc. 20, we have to test it. I can only imagine this is a step towards studying responses to the next category of payload." Dad blinks. "You're telling me the next category? They're gonna start feeding more living things to Inc.?" "There has been a clear pattern in your deliveries for the last 6 months." The evaluator slips a sheet out of the file and slides it across the desk to him. Dad picks it up slowly. Black bullet points descend the page, each followed by a word or two. Mundane things granted importance through bold font. The title of the document is set in the top corner. Disposals Division. D4D029083. Payloads assigned year. He starts down the list. M67 hand grenade, quantity 24. ANM14 TH3, quantity 64. 100 liters H2SO4. Dad brings the sheet of paper closer to his face. He barely remembers these disposals. Many of the initial payloads were standard, military excess and refuse. He follows the itemized list down. 110 pounds assorted fruit. 100 liters ethanol. Fine china plate, quantity 99, 1 broken in transit. Beetle, quantity 1. Dad made the disposals fairly irregularly. He might complete 2 one week and then go months without having to dump anything in Herauder's surreal trash compactor. They tried to wine and dine it, he mutters. The comment sends a twitch through the thin line of the evaluator's mouth. He skips to near the bottom of the page to the disposals he can still remember pulling from his rucksack or unloading from a truck. Cow, quantity 1. Assistant, refuge. Horse, quantity 1. There is a roiling in his gut, a nausea that develops as the nature of the payloads dwindle in reason or sense. The latest bullet point fires a flash of recollection through his mind. He had never doubted, never faltered, only responded to the increasingly peculiar payloads with mild confusion and a lack of the interest necessary to intervene. Until... Human infant, quantity 1. I'm not putting this on record, the evaluator says, tearing Dad's focus away from the paper. When he looks at her again, she has removed her glasses, shedding the severity of her occupation. The front of the recorder on the table has been angled toward her throughout the conversation. She turns it on its side to show him. He's met with his own blurred reflection, tinged green in the device's blank screen. Why? He asks eventually. She slips the disposals list from his hands and tucks it back into the file, then sets it down. It won't make a difference, she says, standing. A protocol breach means termination. The order's already come through. Dad thought he would react, burst from the chair to squirm for release like a claw-clipped dog as the guards rushed in to drag him away. He'd even predicted falling to his knees and begging like a stray. But the evaluator's words hang in the sterile air, and he feels a warmth. It suppresses the cold shock issued by the bullet point detailing the human infant. Dying, he supposes, is easier than finding out. It seems the evaluator expected more, too. She smooths her scrubs and gestures for him to stand. He does, slowly. His limbs obey him with shaky uncertainty as they carry him to his own termination. I'll walk you back to your room, Corporal, she says, watching him fumble to his feet like a doe. Is that where it'll happen? You know, she says, looking over her shoulder, I've never gotten to find out. Usually when I tell someone they're being terminated, their reaction warrants sedation. Then they're taken away. I'd rather have some company, Dad says. The evaluator smiles. A cold, starless crescent moon. They walk through the quiet halls in silence. The complex is maze-like, and Dad has never had to know more than the 4 walls of his cubicle. The evaluator leads him with confidence. On occasion, she pauses and turns heel, leading them down a different path to avoid the oncoming footfall. Dad isn't sure what to think about. When he thinks back to that moment, staring into the eyes of the infant coddled in his rucksack, he can think of no alternative. What if he had carried out the disposal and fed a child to the aberrant creature? If he hadn't asked the driver to look, if Ink wasn't satisfied, would Herauder have him try with a more extravagant offering? A teenager? How many bodies would it take to come to the same lack of conclusion? How many lives to realize we will never understand the aberration? I did the right thing, he murmurs. The words bounce about the empty hallway in an echo. I know, she responds. He didn't expect her to. They reach the door to his cubicle. Before you go in, Corporal, may I ask you a question? Flouting protocol. Tread carefully. Could result in your own termination. She handles his jest with reasonable sincerity. For a moment, Dad thinks that she has become solemn, but she brightens and shakes her head with a scoff. Go on then, says Dad. Why aren't you afraid? She asks. Dad considers this. He leans at the doorframe and exhales, his head knocking gently against the wall. His eyes watch hers. Hers rest upon him patiently. Dad searches within himself for a moment. Why isn't he scared? It's a feeling in his chest, as steady as stone. A newly noticed and unwavering solidarity. It issues him boldly towards his fate. Perhaps it's not that dying is easier than finding out. No, he thinks. That isn't it. Somewhere deep down, says Dad, tentatively. I know I'm not done yet. I won't. I can't die yet. The evaluator laughs with slight disbelief. No, Dad insists, with a nod. He straightens back up. There's an anchor, he tells her. He raps his chest. Something is keeping me here. The infant rotates in the ooze of its capsule. Its small pink mouth opens and shuts, and its eyes blink without necessity or purpose. The mutilated land surrounding it, arching, alien, and wrong, is unlike the infant's old home. Sterile, smooth-surfaced, predictable, lit. The truck door swings open. The driver gets out and bends down, nudging Dad's unconscious vessel away from the capsule with his booted feet. He picks the capsule up and turns it in his hands, and then holds it to his helmet and shakes it gently. Something is said. The infant takes comfort in the garbled human sound. The driver flicks his visor up, revealing mottled brown skin and 2 tired hazel eyes. Sorry, guess you can't hear me with the lid on. The driver pops the capsule in the passenger seat of the truck and pulls the seatbelt around it. Then he turns to Dad's unconscious vessel. Time to move on then, says the driver. He removes his own helmet and pulls the built-in headset from inside. He drops it and crushes it beneath the heel of his boot. It crackles feebly. Before getting back into the truck, the driver watches Dad's vessel for a moment. It is a stainless steel automaton designed to be piloted remotely from the nearest hospital. Dad is kept there to have his vitals closely monitored. He is a talented disposal handler and an accomplished corporal. Sending Dad into the plantation with his organic body would be reckless and stupid. His death would come at too great a cost, unless, of course, he was to disobey orders or breach the confidentiality of his payload. What a waste of an excellent soldier, the driver thinks. Kill me instead. The driver laughs wryly. They will kill him, but they will kill him too, not instead. The difference, of course, is that he can't be remotely deactivated like Dad's vessel. The pros of being an employee so unremarkable that Herauder can risk sending him out into the wild with his flesh and bone body. The driver gets into the truck. Half a mile ahead, he can see ink flailing about between the hilltops, tangled in a skirmish with a flock of gulls misinformed on what airspace is safe. The driver reaches in front of the baby and takes a pistol from the glove compartment. He turns it over with an air of unfamiliarity and then points it at the GPS unit and shoots. The recoil jerks his entire right side backward, and a blunt crack rattles the truck. An echo travels the misshapen hills of the plantation and vaults from one steep hillside to the next. The driver winces at the dark, sizzling crater, wounding the GPS unit. Luckily, he knows where he's going. If something is keeping you here, then I'm getting my first week off in 10 years. Dad doesn't sense her irony. They step into his cubicle and are met with 3 nurses. 2 of them approach. They each take one of his arms and lead him to his bedside. Dad sits down. The evaluator hangs in the doorway with heightened curiosity. She feigns a calm smile. People die here every day, and this is nothing new. But no, this is something new. Or maybe not new, but irregular. Something in this ritual killing feels slightly out of place. A link missing, or a beat out of time. Its irregularity agitates her. It manifests in the wringing of her hands. A cold creeps over her shoulders. Behind her, rushing footsteps pulse down the hallway, but she does not turn to acknowledge their source. The 3rd nurse snips the corner of a sealed syringe and decanters its insides into a silver kidney dish. He systematically attaches 3 appliances together and then unscrews the cap of a small reagent bottle and inserts the newly assembled needle, filling it with a viscous blue liquid. Before he lifts the filled needle from the bottle, he pauses. He looks up. The evaluator thinks for a moment that he must be looking at her, but as her lips part to speak, she realizes that he mustn't be. His eyes are settled firmly over her shoulder. "Yes?" says the 3rd nurse. From beside her raises an arm, dressed in the swamp-brown canvas of Herauder soldier fatigues. She stumbles aside. The individual is pointing a gun at the 3rd nurse. Beneath the individual's other arm is a silvered capsule containing a baby suspended in silver liquid. The 3rd nurse immediately drops the syringe and raises both hands in the air. The 2 nurses restraining Dad slacken, but as Dad tries to force himself back upright, they tense, bending to pin him back down to the hospital bed. The 3rd nurse is reinvigorated by a sense of justice, presumably after having seen the strength of his fellow nurses. He fumbles for the security alert button on his pager and picks the syringe back up. He points it toward the fatigue-wearing interloper. "Drop it," says the interloper. "You drop that," says the 3rd nurse. "Then release him," the interloper commands. "Let go of him, turn around and face the wall. And put your hands in the air." "Shit," says Dad. The evaluator, with both her hands above her head, nods in the direction of the interloper. The interloper nods back. She turns to address the 3rd nurse. "Come on, let him go. Security can handle the rest," she adds. "Just let him go, and we won't get shot." The restraining nurses look to the 3rd nurse for instruction. He nods apprehensively. They loosen their grip on Dad, who waits a moment before getting calmly to his feet and lifting his hands above his head. The nurses are momentarily confused by this display of subservience. They had assumed the interloper was with Dad. They turn from him, emboldened by his surrender, and in the same moment are all struck by him. The first takes a palm to the throat and reels back, coughing. The second is sunk to her knees by a kick to her huff. And the 3rd Dad pins against the wall with his forearm. Dad wavers for a moment. "Are we leaving?" he asks the interloper. "Yes," says the interloper. "You coming?" he asks the evaluator. "Yes," says the evaluator. We love our listeners, fans, patrons, and supporters. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.